So the transfer from B into that huge retention pond. I've got a 6-inch pump that we're working on, but it's got a 10-horse electric motor on it. Where the freak is either with low voltage or something like the starting capacitor. They're about that big around. There's 3 of them in there, and then there's 3 run capacitors there also. Chris Supply, or not Chris, from electric.
Okay.
And they've got them. That would be all electrical, so that'd be pretty easy to just flip a switch, and that's the other deal, we're babysitting that every day, all day long.
And how much does it
Runs
set?
about an hour and a half on a tank of fuel.
Oh, wow.
You just put $80 worth of fuel in it, lowering the Pond Day.
Right.
Something like every other day on Pond Day, otherwise, it's right up.
Yeah.
50 mile water.
Yeah.
That'd be around 80,000, 90,000 gallons a day. Going in there, so that's not that big a pond, so you can see it. In a day and a half, you can see that she's putting the
Stick
water.
your lips so we can start. Oh, now it's
We
just.
have not been recognized, so I'll show you
So as it is, you go ahead.
I'm gonna go grab it.
Yep, yeah, go for it. We're fine.
Prepared.
So how much will this new one cost then?
the new, starting capacity.
Starting, yeah.
I think they're, I'll say 48 to $60, but I haven't priced them, but that's kind of what they run. We've got an account at Crum, so they're almost like, the only people that really do electric motors is Turbo Bill.
I know that's.
Well, they took stuff to them before. They raised the support. They're the only ones that do that kind of thing.
Oh, come on now.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
As it is 5:01 on March 25th, 2025, we'll bring this Hermosa Town work session to order. We don't really have to, okay, Kent. We
There
don't
he is.
really have to follow the agenda in entirety because it is just a work session. We will be on tape and on video. You are on candid camera, everybody. It is not live yet, because we're still trying to work out all the bugs, but you will be seen, so. Just so everybody knows.
Smile.
Yeah. As far as attendance goes, Kramer's here, Ferguson,
Yeah.
Harris is not here yet. Boots,
Here.
Service.
Here.
We also have Kent here, Mr. Gang, Mr. Ferguson. Terry is here. And we have an audience member who is.
My name is Haley Moline Summer.
Good,
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Haley Summer.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you for coming. On our work session tonight, we have A through E. The first thing I want to do is add 2 things to the front of it, I thought. Is Anthony calling in or coming? Okay, so we'll just wait a little while, we'll discuss something. And then I wanted to say, because of everything that we've had to add tonight, that I'm not positive that we will even get to abatements and complaints. Everything else has to be taken care of, This does too, but it might have to wait. We'll see how much we can get into that discussion. So, the first thing that we will discuss tonight then will be the, water ordinance. We'll wait for the new well for Anthony. And we'll go to the water ordinance. So when we left the last meeting, we were, all supposed to take home the paperwork and compare it, with the old stuff. Hey, John.
What item do you want to put the voice?
Right. Hi.
Hi.
Shanna is here? That's right. I knew there was something. Thanks. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so we'll change that. First thing we will discuss will be Roy's Drive-In. So that'll be number 80 from now. And this has come up because there's been a lot of interest in the drive-in. The last we heard, it was for sale, and there was some people interested in it. Aaron has got a lot of comments and questions about it, or had, and so he came up and did a bunch of research. And so we'll let him tell us what he knows and ask the questions.
All right, so, start with the most recent communication I've found from the town to Haley. This was, in August of 2023. The town informed Mr. Ortner that the town chose to hold off on mandating connection to the sewer line. There was concern that raw sewage was being pumped to the back of the property, and the town requested records indicating that was not occurring. There's with that, a letter from the attorney at the time for the town, which was Mitch Johnson, stating that I've been directed by the board to respond to a letter dated December 2nd, 2022. At this time, I advise the board to hold off on mandating connection to the sewer system. With no development plans in the future, your client's only option would be to extend the main sewer line himself. So what it looks like is the town did, in a roundabout way, give Roy's Drive-In permission to open and operate without connecting to city sewer, using the storage tanks and leach field on the premises, the leach field to drain the liquid and solid storage tanks for pumping and reporting. And it seemed to be that it got to the point where the town was okay with that happening, as long as we were given updates on when the solids were pumped and transported, only to make sure that it was being done. And it does seem to be that it may be open this summer, so we just want to set it clear that that's our current stance as it has been in the past.
So we cannot vote on anything tonight, but we can discuss this. And because they're wanting to open for the summer, it kind of needs to be discussed tonight, and so that we can have it on the next agenda, to give them the permission if we decide that is how we're going to do that. The vote is for that. Ideally, we know we want the connection made to the town sewers. However, in a temporary basis, for a couple reasons. One is maybe he's not quite ready to sell, and two is maybe a new person might want to get in there and see what it's all about before they spend the money to hook up to the sewers. And like Aaron said previously, we had agreed to allow them to pump as long as we got the paperwork on the pump work. The sign bill by the person pumping it and the dates that it's done. So the discussion tonight would be whether or not the board still feels like we can allow this, or not. so that we can be prepared for the motion, whatever it may be at the next real meeting.
So you're saying that if, to go with what we had decided before, pump and report, and they can be in operation.
Correct. For this year only,
Probably be reviewed annually.
yes.
And at what point in the development is it gonna be required?
Well,
Is there a certain stage? Because there's nothing surrounding them gonna make it shorter.
more than what there is now, or probably from what the future holds too. Unless they sell some of their property, you're right, it's not gonna get any shorter than what the distance requires now. And so that is something we'll have to discuss is the time frame. Joan?
Annually.
I'm just wondering if it's okay with the town, is it also okay with the state? Do they meet the state requirements that they fund?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Right, so this is where things get a little interesting. There's a requirement that if they're within 400 feet of a connection, they have to hook up. But they were there before there was access within 400. The drive-in existed before the Hermosa Hills development went in. So the issue here is that they were operating, and then a development came in giving them a path toward connection. So if that connection is required, there could be a very big question as to who would be financially responsible for that connection, as far as I'm concerned. If it's required by the state, and Roy's Drive-In had nothing to do with creating the situation where they could be connected to the line, can we expect them to pay for it? That's a
Right, okay, well, there becomes an issue because they had made agreements between those two contractors. They had an agreement in place, as I recall, in the very beginning.
The state gave them a certain amount of time to hook up.
Yes. Go ahead.
And when Roy's went in, they were very well aware
Very well.
that, the town would require them to hook up when that development, they knew the development was coming. So it wasn't a surprise to him even before he opened. So he was aware of it.
Just a minute, Joan. Did you have another?
No, I just guess I haven't remembered call.
Yeah.
If you're reading the water ordinance and stuff like that, anytime that somebody has to hook to the main, I mean, they're responsible for making that connection. Right, so I don't know why there would be a question as to who would pay for it.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
elaborate?
Yeah. So they didn't have, when they built their own septic system because they didn't have access. They weren't within that boundary. Then a situation was created that brought them within that boundary of no action of their own. Roy's Drive-In didn't do anything to cause them to fall within that 400 that they previously were not. So they were operating the septic system they had and then became available not because of their own actions. So I do think there is a question to whether or not they could be expected to run a sewer line that only became necessary as a result of actions of another developer.
How far is it supposed to go?
According to this, if they were connected, it would have required some 700 feet of line.
Well, then how can you say they're within the 400 feet?
So it's,
Because of the new development.
right,
Is it a boundary versus the,
it's a boundary, not the building. So it would be 700 feet from where they have access to their building, but the boundary of the property is within 400.
So it's 300 feet on their property to get to the boundary, and then about another 400.
Just about, yeah.
but they have an agreement with the town, knowing that it was coming in. So
They
these
did.
come into play.
Right.
I mean, the town allowed, for lack of better words, they allowed the septic to go in
Correct.
with an agreement that when we were within 400, that was going to happen, they would be required. So does that,
Well, that is what the board needs to decide.
do we have a copy of that agreement?
Aaron has
So-
been doing a lot of research and has copies of almost everything. He contacted, yes.
Yeah. Well, it went on for a better part of the year, so it was very spread out, but it's all here. So this is that specific Bloomfield plumbing and heating. So wastewater holding tank system for Ray, this is about holding tank, request for variance to place the holding tanks in the 100-year floodplain. It is our understanding that the city of Hermosa sewer line will be extended this fall adjacent to the property. If the drive-in theater complex is located within the city's jurisdictional boundary and the city chooses to provide service to this facility, you will be required to connect. Right there, if the city chooses to provide service to this facility, that's leaving it up to us whether or not we actually want to provide the service. There's gray area everywhere here.
Okay, Chuck?
How that originally came about was, he was building a driving. He knew he had to have sewer, but the availability was not there at that time. So the second phase of that development would have brought another road in, which would have extended the sewer and water mains the next block over. And in the fracas of trying to get, his permit and get things rolling, I said, well, first he blamed the county, then the city, then the county, back and forth. And blamed basically both of us because he was unable to get the information that he needed to be able to open it. So that night at the meeting, I said, there's a solution here. The state will agree to this, the town probably will, and so will the county, for you to put in a holding tank. There was never any sewer put in. So what it is strictly a holding tank. And I want to say it's 2250, 2250, because the 2,500 gallon cistern, once they create a holding tank out of that, so the outlet has to be kept. So where the diffusion came in was the amount of water that was going through his meter compared to the amount of water that was being pumped and hauled off did not jive. Wasn't even close. So the state gave him, I believe it was a year from the time that he opened to physically get hooked up to city sewer because of the distance. He would have to run a service line probably 600 feet to get to the nearest 8-inch city sewer. So everything was fine, DNR agreed and all this, one thing other. However, like I said, the numbers didn't match up with the amount of water that was going through the water meter as opposed to, and how much water could a person drink? 100 gallons, over the period of time. So he was instructed by DNR that he had to pump this thing and had an alarm on it when the water level got to such and such, then he knew it was time to pump. And that's where the diffusion came in, was the amount of water that was being used did not jive with the amount of water that was being pumped and hauled off. Now, keep in mind, he could use a gray water system, which would allow him to, like, sinks and drinking fountains and all that stuff, could actually be land applied. But everything was all parking lot except for the northwest corner, which was a slough area. And upon investigation, the water and stuff that was standing in that slough area was black and had quite an odor to it. So there was no question that some of that water was being pumped over on the Nagabar ground, and, so then the Nagabar said, well, what's the big deal? I mean, the town has pumped water on us for years and years, so it's not a big deal. That's where the sticker was, that the numbers did not jive on what they were going out. So obviously there was some black water going somewhere else. It's plumb simple and legal and everything else, if they just have a pumping situation, and the DNR will approve it and whatever, but you cannot apply black water to the land whatsoever.
Joan?
This is a company that closed. Now they want to reopen. I think you have to think of it as that and do new contracts, and as you would with anybody wanting to start this right now. Whether you give them a year or 2 years to do something, I mean, do it in the sense that you would do this for anyone, because they did close.
And the woman sitting next to you is the woman that is, thinking of managing it this year and possibly buying it, is that?
Real.
Incorrect, no. Thank you, though. No, I'm here on behalf of Roy. I am the listing agent for the property,
Okay,
so,
okay. Okay. Yeah,
Is there any way we could kind of shift this decision on to DANR and present the situation to them and see if it's an acceptable situation to them? And
well, we have to.
and then use their guidance on it
Mhm.
as far as how we make the decision?
I think we do.
Right, but I mean, so then why do we need to have a long discussion about it if we have to go through them?
Did you know anything about it before this? Much?
No, not necessarily, but I'm just trying to find out what's going on and everything, and, you know, I mean, last thing we want to do is get crosswise with them. So
Oh, we cannot get crosswise with that, and we do have to bring this up with them. But we had to discuss it amongst ourselves first before we, go any further.
The ruling is very simple with DNR. We've dealt with it several times. If you're within 400 feet, you have to hook up. End the story. Now, I have not measured it in the last couple of years or whatever. Through Bryce, him being able to open the holding tank was the solution. They gave him, I believe, a year to be able to run the holding tank, but the numbers had to match, and they did not.
And they didn't.
So that's where the problem
Correct.
came in.
Okay, yeah.
So based on that, I mean, we can assume what DNR is going to say, and their position is probably gonna be the same, that legally you're supposed to hook up, if that, in their public they say, and if the town so chooses to waive that for a year, that's up to them. I mean, we can assume that's what DNR is doing. But they're gonna put it back on us, we're okay with it, we require them to hook up, but the town wants to waive it for a year, but he has had the time from the time that he's closed until now. I mean, he's known that the whole time it would have to be hooked up, and kind of agree, you have to treat it as a new business, and what would you require any other new business to do? I mean, it's now existing within 400 feet.
Aaron?
Well, there's a, unless there are letters and papers out there that I haven't been able to find, there's a fair amount here saying that. There's nothing anywhere in here that indicates in any way that they were given any sort of a timeline to achieve any. They didn't close voluntarily. Initially, they were basically told they needed to close, from what I can gather. So to say that we're gonna treat it as a new business wouldn't be fair on the grounds that they were involuntarily closed and weren't given permission to reopen until so far into the season, which would have been financially infeasible.
I'm aware of
So to that end, they put it up for sale. They tried to sell it because they were feeling like they were in a position that they either needed to get rid of the property or spend some $300,000 on the septic system that they didn't really need. And really, I mean, we can go back and forth on what happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, however, but this is one of the few commercial businesses that could be successful in this town. And we need more of those. So we need to be a little less, let's go over why things happened in the past and focus on what needs to happen now to make it possible. And there's nothing here about timeline. So as far as I'm concerned, this is indefinite, as long as it's operating as a movie theater, then we've already given the approval. Unless there's real hard reasons to say that this is no longer valid. I mean, they couldn't open the season that we gave them this letter because it was already July, and you're not gonna open the movie theater.
And was that 3 years ago?
This was in 23. And I would like to give Haley some time to tell us about how maybe some of the struggles they've been having in trying to sell the property with consideration for the background of this situation, how difficult it may be to sell a property that doesn't seem to be viable as its current business and may not be viable as a future business without spending a ton of money on septic.
Right. Knowing any potential buyers, knowing that it was even a possibility that they would need to eventually hook up. Likely, I have always worded it as a likely inevitability that you would need to hook up to the city sewer. What timeline that would be required is unsure. There's a lot of gray area, like you said. But that has almost exclusively been the straw that breaks the camel's back in any interested purchase, any interested buyer. It's always too much. Obviously, you look at that. The last estimate that Roy has to hook up was 300,000 was the estimate that he was given. That is not feasible for anybody that's wanting to start a drive-in that's already, been closed for 2 years. It's an uncertain business at this point. So, if it's beneficial to the city to reopen the drive-in, which I think personally it would be, any assistance that the city could give to a new buyer, any leeway potentially for a new buyer, that would make it easier to sell, certainly. And I think long-term, if you want the drive-in to be open and succeed long-term, selling it is the best option.
I won't argue that point. But for us as a city, we have got to check with DNR.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be our very first thing.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we can draw up a letter to them and see how they feel about it. We have to go through them because that's where all water sewer issues,
Understood.
okayed by them, and we have to be on their good side for all the city's citizens' purposes. Ken?
For the reasons you just said, it has to be proven. I agree with Aaron on all the reasons to do it, because it is a business and it's a cool business. People like it.
Yep.
And, so just a cool factor, that's what it's. But, maybe approve it for the season and basically like a use summary review. But open that whole point up with subject to DNR approval. We will permit, we have covered that base anyhow.
Yep.
I think so. I agree, we need the drive-in, but I think they use the town as a scapegoat because they were having some other problems and they told everybody that it was the town's fault that they had to close. And it was not the town's fault, it was their own fault. They did not follow the rules and regulations that we had stipulated to them. So I don't think that the town didn't do anything for him to have to close. I think they had other issues and they used the town as.
And I don't know for sure, I don't know that anybody knows this for sure, doesn't matter. The whole thing is we have to have DNRs. So at this point, I would think that needs to be our contact first, and that, and they may want contact from Roy or from you, also wanting to know exactly what is needed of them, what is expected of them, and if we both get wording to them, get letters to them, we might get an answer quicker with both of us going after it. So.
Was the ENR aware of the sewer, the black sewer issue.
What's that?
Was DNR aware of the black water
I
issue?
don't think they were ever brought into the situation of that. If we took pictures of it. One of the problems they ran into also was an easement for the line to physically hook up to the city. Those lots were platted and are still platted. And actually, Poulos had looked at it to make that other subdivision, which would have brought the sewer main closer for them to hook up.
So those of you that don't know, I will show you. Right now, the housing is here. There was, in the original plat, was another street and row of houses over here. A little bit. And which would have brought them closer to the city limits. But then they realized that when they made this, that maybe their footage was off a little, and they didn't leave themselves quite enough space for 2 rows of houses and another street in between it. So then they discussed the fact of having 1 row of houses, just back to back, and then it could be a smaller street going through. And if I remember correctly, the contractors, it wasn't financially worth the finances for 1 row of housing. Am I correct on that?
Well, what happens is when you have a street, there's a certain amount of cost that is involved
Yeah.
in putting the infrastructure in. So if you can only build on one side of the street, then that doubles the cost because
Correct.
you can't develop on the other side of the street. So that's why there was an easement created across one of those building lots to be able to hook up. And that was through Agbowers and the original platting of that. The original property belonged to Agbowers to start with, so they were kind of in part of the pie all the way around. So,
Right. Yep.
in the story.
I guess my only point was that, if DNR would have been aware of the Blackwater issue, they would have been the ones to close them down. So when they say it was a town, I was surprised by that, 'cause I don't think the town sent a letter saying you need to close your, we don't have any of that. Anyway, so if our first step is to go to DNR and say, what will you allow? If they were aware of past issue that might come into factor what they say about it. I think they would just treat it as a new, new applicant and what would need to be followed.
Aaron?
Yes.
All right, so Surface Water Quality Program Administrator letter, Dean Goodman. The South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resources in receipt of 1 set of plans and specifications for a wastewater holding tank system that will service raised Black Hills Twin Theater to be located, and so forth. Your request for a variance to place the holding tank in 100-year floodplain is hereby granted. So DANR was fully aware. They received the plans and approval was given.
They were aware of the plans, they weren't.
Right.
But that doesn't, we just need to get a fresh copy of that.
Right. You get their approval, and that's for always.
Exactly, yes.
If they say no, then
Exactly.
you go back to square
I'll
one.
make a motion.
Yeah.
Would it be a bit of a compromise and some sort of positive overture to businesses, this case Roy's, that, that any stating that the town board is inclined to approve it subject to DAM.
There you go. So we'll get that letter out. And we'll get back to you. We'll let you know when, or Aaron will let you know when we get the letter sent and maybe give you a copy of it. And like I said, I think it would be good to also, or Roy to also send me a letter.
Absolutely. But we've been inclined to approve on the DNR's approval. I think it also say with it.
An annual review.
Well, the problem with, and we keep going back to this annual review, the problem with this annual review, they're trying to sell the property. You're putting stipulations in there that's gonna reject buyers, annual review. they're gonna buy the property and then have to fight with us again next year. They're not gonna be able to sell the property.
Suggesting we just let them
I said,
stay on their own separate.
I would say this, and here's what I would say. I would say as long as the system that is in place meets the capacity of their business needs, then we will permit it so. But in any situation where they change the purpose of the business, then that may require approval. So they're looking at, it's a drive-in now, and they're looking at the possibility of doing other things with the property, because it's seasonal. They're open for 4 months, and
Right.
4 nights a week during those 4 months. The whole operating hours is absolutely trivial compared to any other property in town. They run a very small period of time, so for us to make an exception for this, it's reasonable. But it's a very low margin business. They might need to come up with some other ways to make money. Hosting car shows, hosting food truck fairs, things like that. But to say, if somebody buys this property, the only thing you can use it for is a drive-in. If you come back next, or really, if you buy this property, you'll have to come back to the town board every year to try to get it reapproved. And by the way, here's a history of how hard it's been to get this done over the past 10 years. You really want to buy that. We need to make it so that whoever buys this can say, well, I have a reason to believe that this will be a successful business and that I might be able to do other successful add-ons to that business as long as I don't push it to the extreme. I mean, I think maybe we could have a stipulation that as long as it's a principally seasonable business that's operated there, that this will persist. But if anything opens up there, or is built there, that would be open year round, then we need to. And these are the detailed questions that we need to talk to DANR, not just DANR, when you think about this, but this is a seasonal business, this is how they want to run it, this is how they've been running it. We're trying to help bring back what was once a very beloved business.
But then that brings the question is that holding tank going to be big enough?
Well, that will be under, we have to see, we will still have to see the pumping reports.
Yeah.
That is number one, has to be done. And for however long we decide, it doesn't matter, but it would have to be done.
Basically, if the system stays within compliance and you're pumping, there's no reason to.
If the board agrees upon that. But at this point, like I said, I believe the first thing is that we have to talk or open the discussion with DNR. And our engineer over here is just going nuts. I can just see it. And it's,
Hang on.
I noticed.
But it's right here is your
I know, and yeah, I get it. So anyway,
Regardless if it's seasonal or year round, I mean, as long as they're pumping and the pumping reports are done and they're keeping up and with the system's capacity. And, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, as long as you're staying within. I can see that, I mean.
So like, as long as there's no spills, as long as there's no leakage, as long as they don't push it to the point where, as long as they maintain it as it is, and.
So, the question is, does New Bar still have any ownership in it, or is that all tax?
does Roy still, he still owns it?
Megabauers.
Oh,
They still
Megabauers?
own the land that it's on.
They don't own drive-in.
No, they never did, did they?
They own, they did own the land initially, I believe. But Roy owns it.
Oh, right.
Because that touches the potential TIF 4 district.
We actually me and her had a little bit of a discussion about that.
Yeah, I'm reserving 3 for Carriage Hills, number 3, so 4, that would be number 4.
Then we can maybe do something then. And that would be awesome, for both parties, both the town and you, and the state, all 3 parties.
You can tax them a little differently than others, if it's a special business like a hotel.
Right.
One thought. Would Roy or yourself or whoever's kind of acting as the go-to be comfortable with Anthony taking a look at what is there right now? He's our engineer. He's been.
Probably, yes. I'd have to talk to Roy, but I'm guessing if it would get us some answers, yeah.
What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, well, state's
He's gonna go to the state and the state's gonna say, what do you got there? How big is your leachate field? How deep is it? Is it built right? What's the size for it? What's the per capita you're gonna expect to have there? They need to establish, and they got a recreation subsection in their design manual, in subsection 20. And it says how much gallons per head will be produced at a drive-in movie theater, yeah. I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
It's in the cookbook.
It's in the cookbook. So that would then say how big it needs to be, maybe that, is there a field or is it just a tank? Or what, there's a whole time of the
It
tank?
does have a
The
field.
whole
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, there's a
For
field
gray
for
water.
the gray water.
So who knows what PERT is? It's even in the county records, but you pull the county records on that.
And that's where it comes into play, is if you're within 400 feet, they will not allow septic system, not to mention that it is in the floodplain. So that can't happen.
We can't have algae, mounds, system engineer field. So the pumping hall, it's not the first time I've seen that. We had a restaurant in Michigan on the water, San Souci, we used to call it the sewer. It was cool, and we could watch all the cargo ships go by, you know? And we wanted real desperately that not to die, because it was kind of a, you know, so I actually got $2 million from the state of Michigan to build a treatment plant. One of the reasons was because that place was gonna close, and that would have been the death nail in the whole business district. So there's opportunities there to try to help to keep the Clickin economic development there.
Is Carl still involved, or? Carl Wonder?
I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware of, but
He was an owner at one point, I don't know if he still is. I had a conversation with him last winter, because he was interested in selling the property.
right. I know that Roy is, the managing partner of that at least, but, he has mentioned him, yeah.
All right, we have put 45 minutes into this. I think we have come to the conclusion that it's kind of in DNR's wheelhouse, so we'll find out. You, like I said, send your letter or whatever, and we'll get back together as soon as we hear any information at all. Is there anything beyond that, Ken?
No, I just had a quick question for you, as to the people that have been interested prior, do they also express plans to utilize the land closest to the highway in particular businesses or anything like that?
Not necessarily any specific part of the land. Most of the people that have expressed serious interest have recognized that drive-in theaters are so seasonal and the income can be very limited. It's a large lot, and so they have explored other potential options. Some people, the most serious recent buyers, explored looking at, adding like a few campsites at a time and making that kind of a campground combo drive-in. Other people were looking at, like we had talked about, car shows, any kind of large gathering, something that you could host, maybe host some people to, because it's such a large open space. Just a way to pay the bills and make some money off the land. But that being said, there's always a question of whether or not it would be permitted at the current state.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erin, for doing all the research. All right, so then that brings us to Anthony. He's joined us, so we'll go to, we have two things with you, I believe, tonight.
Yes. So in your packet, you have the report from Pete Walden, the geologist. So surely on the first page kind of says everything. It's a bigger picture on the second page where you're zoomed out. You can see we're down on the bottom right of the page there. You can see how the red lines are the surfaces of Madison. So 3,000 to 3,100 below ground level. So when you look at the zoomed in map of the Preston property, and you can see Shore Road there. It's like that Shore Road, Murphy Road. Like that's all the Preston property. And the well location versus to the left, I mean, the areas that he's talking about, that he looked at that were to the west side of the Preston property, are still in the same, within that same 300 feet that we were gonna drill anyways. So I tried.
Nothing significant
No,
for saving money then.
no, I tried to, I printed out the driller's proposal to see which parts of the proposal would be different. And his proposal actually says 2,500 feet.
Okay.
So there's 100 feet and then there's another 2,500 feet, so 2,600 feet. And that's what this says, it would need to be anyways on the west side. So there's a couple of things we can do. I don't think there's gonna be any significant difference drilling on the west side of the Preston versus the east side, other than we'll have to pump it farther, we'll have to go through Maine that we never intended to build, and get it to our tanks. And so it's just added cost, really, and you saw how much it cost when I proposed to go from like end of 3rd Street up to Tower Hill.
Right.
You know, that's 6 digits, so what I would like to do is, because I want to secure DNR's funding, that it's earmarked and that they're like ready to close on things. I would like to advertise, even though we'll still be waiting for a permit, if you, in the next board meeting, approve me to do the location that we want to do. I want to also put it in the Custer Chronicle for drillers. And I would like to also have a performance bond in it. So they have to perform. So that way, none of these things, which as you can see, there's a lot of variability and depths and all that stuff. So when they give us their price, and it says 2,500 plus 100, that's all we're paying. We're paying for Madison, right? Now, they use their calculations and they need to go 200 extra feet. Well, that's in the performance bond, right? They're required to perform. So obviously, I'm trying to avoid additional costs just because of unforeseen. So when they give their proposal, it has to be the conservative number, not, you know, we're just scratching the top of the Madison and we're not puncturing through it and getting a good production well. So I don't think that DNR would have a problem. I know that that's what they would like us to do in advertising, is go through our legal newspaper or two publications. I think it's, if we put in there that the contract is contingent on the water rights permit being issued, then we're not like in a situation where we're entitled to pay this driller for, I mean, yeah, he's not gonna drill well until there's a permit in hand anyways, so no cost would get incurred. But we didn't waste their time doing the bid because we're saying that, you know, we're still acquiring our water rights permit. But that would lock us in for this year. Because what I'm afraid is that we're getting pushed out of the season. And if we get pushed out of the season, the A&R might try to claw back that loan. So, I'll have to go to the next time, put it on the agenda.
Put it on the agenda and get it moving as fast as possible.
Yeah, and that way we have our driller, we know we're safe, we're gonna perform, and then
Okay?
Then are we back to the,
3 months through the permit, and then they can drill.
Are we back, Shannon?
are we staying within one third location now?
Yes.
It's just a,
No, this would be, the location would be right on the corner here of 79 and Shore Road, kind of. It's the easiest way to explain it. We bought
this
property.
blue area there, if you set up the X here, it's kind of,
See the little star right here?
oh, yeah.
That's about where the well is gonna go. We bought that piece of property from Trustees.
And then this is a cheaper option than from the What we're talking about.
Better option. better option. And now we're doing the medicine well rather than an Indian care. Indian care.
Yeah, in the last meeting, we had the geologist come in and they asked if he would look at the west side of the Preston property and see if there's any, like if we could have any cost savings, right? And it's still within like the 300 feet that you gotta drill anyways to get into the aquifer, so there wasn't really any work, but it cost more to do it because you have it way off to the west and now you gotta put that water back to the east where our tank is. Where we have, land, so. But it was worth looking at because everybody knows that as you go west, it's the water, it'll get shallower. The Madison gets shallow. I mean, you gotta get up in Boulder Canyon, then it's 1,500 feet.
It's been shallow. Ish.
Ish,
Good.
Yep.
Okay, what else do you have for us today?
Well, I don't know, did it get on the agenda? Because it didn't see
We
it.
added it.
Oh, I got it, okay. So this is the proposed tip 3, DGR prepared some cost estimates. This looks like a 3.8 or almost $4 million project.
I didn't print anything.
Oh,
I just
so yeah, I mean,
give it to you.
these are the cost estimates from
You want to go
DGR.
ahead and print it up and we'll.
It's just a list of parts, basically.
Yeah, well, there's price on you just pass it around.
Okay. All right.
You can pass it around, these are the layouts that were done.
Yeah, these are real interesting, they look pretty good.
Yeah, so,
You know, Anthony, real quick, okay, on this one, on the PDF, you couldn't see the phase 1 and 2, so that's good to show it on.
yeah, you already sent it twice too, so I don't know, I printed out the second one, so maybe that was why the first one was maybe corrupted or something.
Yeah, this looks like a really nice layout.
So this is tip 3, so this is, carriage hill right up here. And how much are we adding on to the carriage hills? Was
I
there
think you made 50 lots.
50 lots?
Really, yeah.
Okay.
Is that what it shows there? And it even lays out which units, you can go online to their website, and you can see which type of house. We've got it all out in
This is the same guy that did
Style.
the presentation.
there. Yeah,
It's fine.
it's manufactured homes, so they're affordable housing. I'm a little concerned only that I saw Dane's prices, I would say that, bidders would probably come in less. There's lots of stuff in there, like, he's got his water taps in there. And I think that each homeowner would pay the water taps. He wouldn't give those. That was like a couple $100,000, so. Yeah, you see 2-inch P, like, that's a line, service line off of the main, I never include those. Cause they gotta pay those separately. So that price could be elevated.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to pick through it with Dan, to have it corrected. He sent it to me, but I just went ahead and sent it to you guys. Better to be too high than too low, I guess, but, it's gonna need a pencil.
This is a change
Yeah,
from the, yeah.
it's gonna need to, I mean, I don't know what Eisman thinks, but it's gonna need to make some sort of economic sense. And I don't know if we're gonna generate $4 million in taxes.
Yeah, it's 4.1 million total.
Yeah. We're not gonna generate that much in
So,
taxes.
like, this is
No.
Vicky's house.
Like, I'll generate that much, I'll generate half that much for Preston probably, and Preston is 100.
And
Is that in a PDF that you should
Higher,
email?
yeah.
Do you have that in a PDF?
Yeah.
You could email.
Yeah,
It's gonna be on the agenda, it'll be in the packet for Tuesday. We'll have it in this, and, yeah.
you can have
Can you
them.
make Freddie's teller a copy? Sure.
Were you here when they said what they're looking at selling these for?
Yeah, what they say,
340 to 350 for manufactured and governor's homes on 0.3 and 0.4 acres is not, in any universe, a realistic price point. So
It just falls under it falls in the loophole, because I think the county considers that quote affordable homes.
yeah,
But in any realistic sense that what you would need to generate as income, to qualify for that type of mortgage is not low income.
yeah, you're a two-family income and you've got some kids that
Well, I
you're
gotta squeeze in
and
everything.
motivated to support, and you're not. Trustees, they'll bring in.
Yeah, those will be, you know, 400, yeah.
Yeah.
400,
Can I talk to you after the meeting?
yeah, so I guess we'll just have to see how it goes, that's their business, right?
Oh,
And-
we're same shape, that's a ridiculous.
So then what's the
This is the.
next step?
yeah, I mean, what's the main crux of this discussion gonna be
So
from this point on?
or the discussion is to, in the next board meeting, to vote for us, Neil and I, to start putting TIF 3 together with them.
Yeah,
We'll have to provide, I could probably get Neil to get a proposal by then,
yeah.
but the town can pay it unless we just want to pass through.
Well, that's, yeah. I would say the development pays our cost
Yeah.
for you to do the TIF research, because if it doesn't pencil out,
Yeah.
then we
Yeah.
shouldn't be paying for any of it.
Yeah, I prefer the town to be a pass-through, I don't want to work in that.
Well, yeah, okay,
At least then we have no cost.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
This is facilitating it.
That's a.
what is the average size lots here?
No. I think they're, what, a third of an acre? Which is decent. I live on a third.
0.3?
Yeah. That's what Dan said.
45 to 50.
And the timetable wise was the other issue, so they're closing on May 15th, you said? So if they had us like in agreement to sponsor the tip, even though they're paying for it, which would be my suggestion, then that's in place, so that helps them to get that going, right? Then the developer agreement can be start working on and the project plan and all that good stuff.
So if we sponsor it, we get our return on our.
We'll get it as soon as they, recorded the first 19 lots, phase 1. Then we get our taxes. We collect our tax money, yeah. And then when they build the houses, then there's another assessment.
It's the overlay now, right now.
Was that, Maryland gonna have, whatever, punched in there first? Did they say anything about that?
Yeah, it's in there. They got a big chunk of money in there. They got half what we spent on the lagoons in there for phase 1. 400,000 in grading.
So the access road to the actual drill site, though, gotta be carved in, right?
You're talking about up north. Yeah.
The well site over there, yes.
Well, that site we're not gonna go with, that's the many cars, so we're gonna go with the one up on Preston Hill.
Talking about the road going up to the tower
No, it won't be on that road.
on Preston.
Oh, on Preston, yeah, that's tip 2 and that one. We're just getting the easement right now from the Prestons, we've got to sign it. So that's the road they gotta improve. It's already built, more or less,
Yeah.
to here. They gotta finish it. But we'll have our contractor do that builds the tank, to finish it off.
That's probably actually on shore business, though, where you can walk Murphy Road. Could have been on shore, it's going to the drill site.
No, all that stuff there is coming off of the highway.
Okay.
This is short way down here.
But wasn't there a road being cut in?
There is, but that one, we're just getting the driveway right now. We don't have to cut that in advance yet.
Okay, so for tip 3, you want that on the agenda again for
Yeah.
Tuesday so we can vote on it?
Yeah, and Neil said that he kind of has a good feel on what it costs, because we just did one, so. We got good templates for everything, so he can redo that for them at a pretty affordable rate. Whatever it was, we had to do like an amendment on it, so there's 2 parts, that'll be what they pay.
Moving forward.
Yep.
Good job.
Thank you. Can I keep it up?
Yeah, you that would be great.
Did you email us?
Yep.
Okay, if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any questions or comments from the board on the TIF 3 project?
I don't know if you guys heard his comments about the town sponsoring the TIF and the developers paying for the TIF development. Can you restate that real quick? Ian?
Yeah.
I can hear.
Yeah, I mean, what I was suggesting is that the town could act as a pass-through for them to have us put the TIF together, but the cost of it should be paid for by the developer, just like when we do permitting and stuff. That way, we're not, like, it has to pencil, there's things that they see that we don't see economically. And, it has to pencil for them. And, they're kind of dictating the phasing and everything, so we're just basically designing that TIF around their business model for that 50 homes. That's why it's really just, they need us as a public entity to gain access to those tax funds for the infrastructure.
Anybody questions? Dan?
So on the other, that's the Preston TIF, correct?
No.
That's on Carey Hill. So every one of them will be sponsored then? By us?
Every TIF, is that what you're saying?
Yes, because you were talking three.
They usually have to be all three
Yeah.
public entities.
We're anxious. I'm anxious. I guess I shouldn't talk for everybody, but I'm anxious. But I think it's great.
But every TIF that we will create will have to stand up on its own merit, so it doesn't mean that just because you guys approve this one, another one comes in, there could be different circumstances.
Exactly. A lot of them.
And every town in South Dakota does that. They'll say that one TIF, we really want that. We think that's gonna generate a lot of other ancillary benefits for the town, and then some they're just like, yeah, I mean, the pencils for you guys will go along with it, but, we don't understand,
Okay. Very good. So now that brings us back an hour later to to the water ordinance. So. There's the paperwork on that. Okay. So did everybody get a chance to go through that? And by going through it, Aaron, Gal, what did you come up with?
I'd like to propose that, so first off, who's the vice chair of water and sewer? Do you recall?
Paris. Or did we, down the street? Did we change that? We changed it. That's all right.
All right, anyways, so in reading through the current ordinances and then the ordinance that Ben has provided, there's actually a lot of really good stuff in the old one. The current one, it's not old, it's what we're using right now. And there's actually some additional things in the ones proposed by Benage that we may want to look at adding. I don't think that we should do a wholesale replacement of the current ordinance with this one. Because this one has a lot more granular detail as far as like piping and hydrants and that sort of thing goes. And I don't see why it would be beneficial to remove that. But what I'd like to propose is that I am either the vice chair of water and sewer or a volunteer or two in the board wants to work with me and identify the differences and then kind of delineate them. And then we can go point by point and say, do we need to add this? Should we take this one out of the current one? you know, that type of stuff, so, I mean, that's why I propose, and I was not sure it was volunteer or anything they want to help out. If not, I could just do it on my own. That would be good.
All right, sounds good. Anybody want to volunteer for that job?
Sounds really interesting. I'm not sure. I'll be able to.
Put it up for it?
Yeah, but. Perhaps.
You were the new vice.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, guys, thank you.
So the one major reason we went through the water ordinance is because of the meters, right? Right. So that we satisfy those questions.
Yeah, we'll look at it. I know that when Chuck and I had spoke of it a long time ago, that his main concern was that we clearly identified the town being the owner of the meter. Is that right, Chuck?
Yeah.
And that, so that was my main focus in requesting the update of the ordinance was just that section, but, you know, in true Spanish fashion, you guys went above and beyond, so I'm not gonna complain about that.
The other thing was ownership, where ownership ends versus big ends.
For the meters,
No,
Online.
system.
for the system,
At
yeah,
a certain point, you get the property line or the connection to the main. That was I think that those were the two big ones.
right, and I think the situation that Chuck brought up in that was that the curb stop's on the other side of the street from the house. And so if we go by property line, then technically, or if we go from curb stop, then technically their line goes under the street. And so the homeowner would be responsible for digging up the street and repairing the street if that line were to require service. So is that true, Chuck?
That's correct.
Gotta get that right. So that might be a situation we need to look at and see if that's covered in here, and if not, add something in there to cover them. Because in my view, if somebody's gonna be digging up the street, it should be the town or a town contractor or somebody like that, and not, you know, whoever the homeowner can afford to pay to do that just because it's such a big important job, but, you know, and I don't know what kind of cost it would be, but going forward, if we have the opportunity to move the curb stop to the same side of the street as the home, you know, and again, I don't know what, if that's technically feasible or not, but if there's an opportunity to do it, we should take the opportunity.
If it's feasible, yes,
I'm not saying that this wholesale do it just for that sake, but if we have the opportunity to do it, then we can move that curb stop, and then thus we kind of reverse that property back to a normal understanding of how this operates.
Right now, the ordinance states that the homeowner is responsible from the property line. So if, well, I'll just use myself as a for instance, if my water went underneath the street, it would be the town's expense to fix it until the property line of which it's mine. And that is not normal to the United States. In the United States, the basic norm is that it is from connection to. So if mine did go underneath the street, I would have to pay for that. Okay, I personally, and this came up whenever we changed the ordinance the last time, was I don't believe that I should have to pay for underneath the street when I have absolutely no say on who drives on that street, what semi truck goes down that street, what plow goes down that street, I don't care what it is. I have no control over it, so why should I have to pay for it to be fixed? And I still believe that way, and I know it's out of the norm on ordinances in every city, or almost every city in the US. I know that, but that doesn't make it right. I mean, there are a lot of changes going on in the world right now because they're not right, and this is one that I believe is not right. Go ahead, Kent.
I remember policy standpoint, I agree with you, because you can't control it, and we don't want everybody and about digging up our streets and
Exactly.
even though they may be corporate licensed. The other part about it is, that I guess, costs and so forth like that, can be prohibited to do that. So, I would agree with you, I like your position.
Right now, it sits that in most places, the water's on one side of the street and the sewer's on the other. So if you have to fix the sewer and it's on your side of the street, you're in good. But if you're the guy across the street and he has a sewer problem, then he has to pay for it. Like I said, I still don't agree with that. I agree with the fact that I can't control who's on that street. Why should it be my fault? Go ahead, Ken.
Kevin has that issue. Is that a developer in our city is required, and just does it as a matter of good practice, to dry stuff the other side of the street. So that's there and ready to go, and they can drop a main in whenever that side is developed.
Gotcha. Sharon, did you have something?
No, just that I agree as well.
Right.
Maybe we'll set a trend.
We've done it before. Dan?
Thank you. I thought we had went in and changed that policy because of the controversy. And in our ordinance, it basically states, number one, you do have to be a licensed contractor to be able to work on water, sewer in our streets or whatever else. But we changed it where if it's before the meter, it's the town's. If it's after the meter, it's the homeowner. And the meter is the homeowner if it's negligence. And that's what we had changed it to, and whether it was through resolution or policy. But we had that discussion and we beat that to death in the work session before. And that's when we came to that answer, because when we put all the brand new water mains in the town, and then of course we ran the new service lines through the streets clear back in that day. Then were the circumstances where, yeah, there's no way that we're gonna make that homeowner pay the cost. And sewer likewise, it's a determination if it's an old concrete line, poly, or what circumstances, so.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that again. Go ahead.
I'm completely in agreement with you, and it makes me wonder why is it the other way in most places? And Anthony, could you maybe give us some devil's advocate on this? Why? Were we aliens?
You're not, there's been debates in other states about the ownership going all the way to the house. And that's a debate that's going on right now, like in Michigan, because they had lead in the line. And so they had a lead gooseneck connected to the main, and then they had lead on both sides of the meter. And so they were testing that if they found it, they had to either keep testing or they had to immediately remove it and replace it, the town. So if some towns were testing, they'd be testing that house continuously. And they got so expensive that then they would just break down and replace it, right? So the ultimate responsibility ends up being the utility to provide water. And if you can, I guess, limit your liability by saying, hey, homeowner, you gotta take responsibility for some of this, then you're ahead of everybody else. But it's going on. I mean, if it gets to a certain point, it'll be all the way to the faucet, That's the trend in the rest of the country.
My water and sewer contractor license was effective in 1987 in Rapid City. They have a list of contractors, and if you spring a leak between curb stop and the main, city digs it down, shuts the corporation off, and says, get somebody to fix it. The city is responsible for the mains and any service line. It's quite a difference between service line and a main. Rapid City's ironclad rule has always been the city owns the mains, and unfortunately, which side of the street you're on, it's whether you pay or you don't. And we beat that to death. The water wasn't quite as big a deal because in 99, 2000, we put all those service lines in from the main across the road to the property owner on the other side. However, that means that all the sewer services that were put in 1963 would become the homeowner's responsibility. So we are opening up quite a can of worms with these service lines 40, 50 years old.
Something to consider, thank you. Go ahead.
So we kind of have a spectrum here, right, from at the connection to at the property line to at the meter is kind of the different strategies. What about the structure rather than necessarily to the meter, to the structure? That kind of seems like as far as I would
You
want
mean
to
the
go.
building,
Yeah,
the house?
Strictly homeowner.
everything inside the house is always.
Oh, yeah. So far, it hasn't gone that far yet.
Okay.
Yeah, or,
As far as I think.
yeah, Cal, you have a
Yeah, I mean, that's what it already says in ordinance 50.27B. Any repairs required to private service lines starting from property line to the home will be the responsibility of the property owner. And from the property line to the main is the responsibility of the town, so that's just what you said, so I mean, I don't know that we need to change that, but, you know, we'll go through and look at the different places,
Yep.
so we'll all be able to easily see what.
very good. Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, that seems to be the best way to have the liability where it belongs, right?
For me,
Just like in plain common sense, it does seem to be.
Depends on who's paying.
Well, so the argument is, and so I agree with what it says there, because the argument is, when it gets to the property line, at that point, it's shallow enough that it's not a very expensive repair, the homeowner can afford it, because it's diving as it gets to the main, right? So, but once it gets onto the road, it's starting to get deep because of frost, and then you got, the main could be at any depth depending on how they laid that pipe. Because they, got hills and everything else. Usually the pipe can go up and down, it's all pressurized. But it gets cheaper as you get to the house. So they can get a guy with mini X to come and do that repairs, so it's affordable. That's how they look at it.
I was kind of like liability, like you kind of pointed at it, right? It's like, all right, so, a truck going down the road, the homeowner shouldn't be responsible. Homeowner being a goofball with an excavator in the backyard, the town shouldn't be responsible.
exactly. Yep. So, that's why the property line seemed like the way to go, and I still think that. But like I said, you guys can go through that and maybe discussions with Benish or with Chuck about how things are or what, anything, feel free to bring them in on any discussions too, okay? All right, so we got that one solved for the night, correct? Very good. That brings us to, fireworks. Let's go ahead and do fireworks. Get that. I don't believe we do here.
Not tonight.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah, not today.
We will later. Tomorrow.
One thing I would ask to double back, so just thinking about it, the ANR situation with Roy's driving, whatever we send to them, I would, if you wouldn't mind, I would like Anthony to have a look at it.
Have a look at it.
It seems like it's got all the i's dotted and t's crossed, so they'll know exactly what we're asking for.
Mhm.
If you're cool with that?
Yeah, I mean, how are we doing that? Is it like confirm that?
What's that?
How are we?
No, I mean, like, what the communication.
Communication.
DNR, like, this is our situation, this is what we're asking for, or this is what we're trying to accomplish.
so that you can make sure, as an unbiased third party, that it's,
I would ask this of you. We'll have Terry write it up and send it to you. And if you think that's the right wording and the right way to ask and whatnot, and if you wanted to add anything little to it, you can put it on your letterhead. And,
So, I will say this, just because I've just experienced this.
okay,
So when I talk to the DANR, that's one way that they talk. Chuck talks to the DANR, it's a different way. They tend to try to help him out. Versus me, I'm on my own, right? I'm supposed to know everything. So, and we're trying to solve a little bit of a mystery, right? So if you wanted to be like kind of, I guess, strategic about it, we would actually have him do the talk with probably Abraham, right? Abraham and Neil? Yeah. So have him talk to the guys over there at DANR. But I won't be in the Marines,
okay.
not saying, and writing down what he's supposed to be, things he's supposed to be saying, because that will get things through.
yeah.
And then we'll get what they need to have to make that all blessed.
Okay.
If you're good with that.
Yep, good with that. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
Be safe.
Have a good night.
You too.
Just to go off of that, should we still send a letter on our side of things?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, absolutely.
And that's just gonna be like
Terry, if you would
just a summary of what they want to do, right?
Yeah, just a summary of what you want
okay.
and wanting the blessings from them, yes.
Him too.
Okay.
Are you, is it
We-
okay?
You can leave, yes. You do not have to stay.
That's the one.
Thanks, Darren.
You have a good night.
Moving on.
All right, that brings us to the fireworks vendor permits. Terry's done a little more research on that for us, and, you can go ahead and tell us what you got
I
there.
contacted Rapid, but they hadn't gotten back to me. I did look at like, where I come from in Fort Pierre, they shoot anything there, it's kind of a free for all, and their permit is $1,000. Now, whether we wanna add it to, you'll have, this is what they filled out last year, the first pages. And then the minutes show that we did away with the 5%. And then we have our new transit vendor tenders application, so do we wanna revise that with something regarding fireworks, or do we want a separate permit for fireworks?
My own personal opinion on that was, because fireworks are explosives, I think that we need its own thing.
Both ones I
That's
found
my opinion
are on the.
on the vendors of pit, but it's a separate section, okay?
Don't we need to know in the new vendor permit that it excludes fireworks into
If we do a different one,
different
yeah.
ordinance numbers?
I guess that'd be the first thing, yeah. Do you want to amend the current transit vendor, or do you want a separate permit for the fireworks?
My own personal opinion on that is just that it's, in the event of changes in the future, it just is easier if it's its own separate.
Mhm.
And I'm talking changes for not fireworks too. It just makes it easier to make the changes if they're each their own separate. So that's my opinion. Board, you have to speak up too. Because I'm only one out of five votes.
It is. Very well, yep. Oh, this was the, okay, this is the one up at. Yeah. We had two last year.
That's what,
Yeah.
that's what.
How big is it?
Bigger than we are.
Yeah, pretty.
So it's not huge over us, but it is in a second class municipality rather than a third.
I guess the one, I just kind of thought about, like the one, you could almost say it's kind of a barrier to entry
guarantee like it's only within that. Kind of idea of profit. That is one reason I would think like, why would we single out a specific type of vendor, okay, it's explosive, we don't want somebody who
I've never done this
has
before.
never done this before, is
They just
very
decided they were
new,
gonna make
like,
some money this weekend.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where, I mean, 1,000, that's a
They have to
lot,
have a permit to buy that kind of stuff.
really.
So,
But yeah, maybe this is definitely one where we do need to vary entry. And the separate, completely, so I totally agree with that, completely separate, because we've been hammering at these permits so much.
I think that should include firearms. I mean, it should be with
Firearms, that's,
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Ammunition.
yeah, ammunition or explosive. Not,
that's a good idea.
not just fireworks, but, and that's something on this new vendor permit that's, you know, this. Explosives and firearms. Excludes vendors, something like that. So that they know that they can't say, well, I'm a vendor and I should be able to use this one.
Correct.
Is there anything else like oddball like that you can, especially with something like
That would fall
like
under that special.
explosives, fire, you know, like what other things would we be like, we only want a professional stuff? That's something thinner, maybe not.
I don't mind. What's the name of that show?
That's right.
Good time. That'd be good.
Fireworks, demolition equipment.
Other things like pharmaceutical, maybe?
Pharmaceutical, there could be other things that would be like, but then you're getting in the weeds, I guess, but.
Pharmaceutical is different than fire, but yeah, it would be.
Or it would be special.
Yeah, just to have it.
Explosives, the only thing I can think of would be like contractors that, need dynamite to, you know. But that's, yeah, that's explosives, so I just think that should be on its own.
I mean, I would just generically call it ordinance, because fireworks are technically a form of ordinance. Those demolition material, and all ordinance.
So then, if we're excluding that one, do we have everything we need on the other one? Are we ready to adopt the other one? Let's exclude the fireworks and do this. And get it over with. Yep.
It's already.
Transient vendor.
You already approved it.
Yeah.
Okay, we absolutely approved it, okay? That's right, that was the one that
So
I.
now we need to go back and amend it already.
See, this becomes a problem.
To add some little note that excludes.
That excludes, so on the,
Of explosives and munitions
and can we? If it's, you can't, unless it's been in effect for a year. Is that correct?
and it's still within its 30-day publication period, isn't it?
Is that?
Before it becomes
We
legal.
had the first reading or the
The
second
20
reading?
days or 30 days.
So it's not an ordinance, it's just a
Yeah,
permit,
this
so
is just
that's
a form, it's
Yeah.
not.
just a permit.
So we approved the new form with the rate of, being $50 if it's on public property and not requiring one on private property, correct?
Right. So we need to just amend that by saying it does not include fireworks and explosives and all that. Firearms, ammunitions, explosives. Go.
So, you're saying the new one has already been approved for vendors,
Yes,
even though if it's in the town limits, you're not requiring them, even if you're not charging, you're not requiring them to have a permit from you? Within the town limits, regardless of where the property is?
This only applies to public property essentially at this point, it's kind of, that's where we ended up.
so it's,
Well, no, a lot of places, you have to have a vendor permit regardless of if you're on the American Legion campground or if you're on government property. I mean, the property is not necessarily the dividing line, it's the charge
We have it in the second line, right, operating on private commercial industrial property. all permit required.
I read that, that's why I'm asking, are you sure that's all you wanted? Do you not, regardless if you're charging or not, do you not feel the need to have that vendor permitted?
The action that the board took was that, no, if it was on private party, they did not, they were gonna leave the property owner liable.
Themselves?
Yep.
And how do you know if they do or not? I mean, what's your, or you don't? It would only be if the state asked them, so to speak, correct? Okay.
I think that, I think that started from when we were talking like an umbrella policy of, you know, because we didn't want to send everybody up here, let them control.
Because of the amount.
Right, the 50 vendors that they're gonna have, and then it kind of came, you know, that should be their responsibility, and we should only have to deal with the one business and let them deal with the umbrella, all the ones underneath them.
Right. So as with sales tax, they would be responsible to the state, not us.
Correct.
That was what I was kind of wondering how that was gonna work. Thank you.
That is correct.
I guess it really is. All right, so we're kind of in agreement, we're gonna do a separate one.
Does the board agree with that we need a separate one for firearms? One yes? Donna, yes? Aaron?
I would say, yeah, at least a permit, even if we haven't decided on whether or not we're gonna charge them. I do definitely think there needs to be something to make them sure people are legitimate, if there's something explosive.
Okay. All right, agree?
I would say if you're gonna require a permit, that you don't require a charge for it if it's on private property, so that we can not look like we're waffling too bad from our previous decision. And, just a note too, I don't know how often it happens that people are coming and selling guns in town, but if they do happen to do that, just let me know, because
You're gonna be buying them? Okay.
Well, when they have an antique car show, they might have a gun show.
At one time, the basement of the old bar over there, community center, was, I thought, even purchased, or maybe rented by Ramsey.
That's what they're
And,
saying.
yeah, Matt Ramsey was going to put ammunitions and store there. But that didn't happen, not by the town, not because the town wouldn't allow it, it just didn't happen.
They did it at Lazy R.
Then they did do it at Lazy Art for a while. They kind of had a pawn shop
Quick draw
sale.
competitions and stuff there too, so it can
They used to have that at the store too.
Well, we used to have it down there. Yeah. Quick draw competition, so. So, do we want to think about that until the next work session and then come up with the details of if there's money involved, or do we just want to revise this and add, change it to firearms and leave it the same? What is the board thinking there?
keep saying firearms, but we started with fireworks.
Firearms.
I mean,
It's all
under explosives.
explosives, yeah. So if I write that all down, it's fireworks, firearms,
It's like one thing I'm thinking about is, all right, well,
ammo,
regular vendor for this.
and explosives.
Try to set up a little bit more of these places. Do fireworks. That would be a different scenario with a large vendor that sets up.
It would be a vendor application for fireworks, firearms, ammunition, and explosives.
I think the one that you just adopted just needs an amendment, like, it can be done and presented for approval, but that's a no. Exclusion. And then we need to just create another one for
Right.
that, and then we'll have to decide on the details of You said no charge or what information we're requiring to prove that they're living in them. I don't know what.
So then at the next meeting, we're gonna have to have a motion to add exclusion of those things on the permit that we've already voted on. And next regular meeting,
Make a motion to approve the amendment. Presented amended form,
okay?
right?
Fine, that's how you,
Like you said, that's a.
but we're not, do we wanna discuss more about the firearms one though?
I'm just saying, instead of making a motion to amend it, and then the next meeting after that, approve the amendment. We've already discussed, we want it amended, so at the next meeting, we could just have. a
That's what I'm
motion
saying, just a motion to do it. Yeah.
The amendment of the vendor's permit.
I did not say that, that's what I meant. Yeah, thank you.
We read through your mind.
Did you read,
But then the other motion would be to,
yeah, then we have to have a whole separate for creation of a firearms
yeah,
vending one. And we can discuss that tonight, or we can put that on the next work agenda. Okay, next agenda.
Just
So the next work session?
Yeah.
Is a-
Just a question on that, though. We shouldn't really change what's here unless we're in the meeting going to approve what's new, right? Just so that there's no loss of continuity, we shouldn't really change this unless in the same meeting, we're also like adding the fireworks. Right, we shouldn't have a point where this one says there's an exemption about fireworks, but there's no.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
I see
hold
what
off
you're
on this until we're
Okay.
ready to approve
Right, so
the
that-
addition of
yeah.
the other one.
Okay, if I understand.
So at the next work session.
We will discuss
Discuss like a new one.
a new one for explosives.
And this one stand.
This one will stand until the time that we get the other one out. Good point, Eric, thank you. Okay? That brings, yes, you have one
I
question?
was just gonna say, I mean, if we, for some reason, don't end up dealing with this before it's time for them to open up.
We have to.
We should,
No, we have.
but yeah.
They're one.
There's no,
So they're probably
it either has to be done at a meeting or at a work session, by mid-April, because they're gonna have to start talking to their salespeople, so that has to be done. All right, well, that brings us to discussion of ordinance 30.07, the board member attendance and compensation. So there's been some discussion about, the fact that Shannon has missed several meetings, and that possibly she was, in the ordinance that she had not met the requirements of 2 per quarter. But in my opinion, that ordinance is another document that has a little gray area in it. And, I personally believe that, maybe this one needs to be rewritten a little bit also. Members must be physically present or via electronic means, teleconference or telephone or the like within 15 minutes after the opening of the meeting, or I don't disagree with that. To remain, remain physical present or via electronic means, whatever, till the adjournment of the meeting. Sometimes that's not always easy either, especially when we have meetings that last till 11 o'clock at night. However, that's fine by me. Speak up if you want anything changed as I read it, please. Any variance of this regulation requires a 60%, so 3/5 vote from the present and through electronic means or the like governing body to approve this is for payment.
Yeah, it's all.
It is all
payment,
for-
not-
Yeah. B, all members of the board of trustees should be physically present. For 2 per quarter for each trustee for the regular meetings, special meetings, and medical disability of a trustee or trustee's immediate family member via electronic means are allowed with no limits. Board of trustee members attending the meeting through electronic means or the like have all the rights and privileges of those physically present at the meeting. Board of trustees president attends the meeting and chaired by the vice or the trustee named by president in absence of the vice. Executive sessions cannot be attended via electronic means. So there is not, that's it.
There's the original, but this section is completely rewritten. Just this.
So the rest of it
This is
is,
just about compensation.
yeah.
Not so much about the attendance.
No, it's the-
And compensation, but
Somewhere there's something about it being, if you don't attend so many per quarter, the board can vote to have that.
So, that's more general, that's the general response to any violation
That's the original.
of, yeah, I'll find it for us. Essentially the penalty for that. Yeah, it's 3199, right, is that where it goes? So that's just what you need to do, and then there's a section. Any person violating any provision of this chapter for which no specific penalties prescribed shall be subject to 10.99. When you chase this down, what it gets to is, and that's their violation of the ordinance. So where's, this is all on the,
The policy and not an ordinance.
there's a point where it says, board members,
where's the policy at then?
wait, this is what you printed out, but this is,
This is, this replaced this.
right.
Deb, excuse me, Deb, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's fine. I think what you guys are talking about was the old ordinance, and I think this, what you just read is the new.
The new,
Yeah,
passed in
So-
23,
Oh,
yeah,
year and a half ago.
Board of Trustees waiver, all members of the Board of Trustees, when it voted before, after, required to attend for. All right, so that's it. So this doesn't include D and E. What we have printed out doesn't include D and E.
But D and E are still in effect. Yes.
Under 30.06, that's a different ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, so 30.07 got changed to 30.06. I think it's.
Yeah, so 30.07 makes changes to things that are called out. And so 0.07 is where it said required to attend 4 of the regularly scheduled meetings. Or 06, right, what it used to say, this overrides that. Where the original 07 didn't have any mention of penalty or anything relating to how many you must meet, but specifically about the payment. So yeah, this new one intermixes 06 and 07, but not clearly.
Not clearly.
And
Yeah, so
They changed one and not the other.
in my opinion, it just goes to hell in a handbasket, sorry.
yeah, so if we go back to 06, this is the original where it was 4 board members, so even if we said, or 4 meetings, now we get down to E, any expulsion or no. If it appears that a member has violated any provision of this chapter or grounds exist to expel or remove the violating board member, the Board of Trustees shall conduct a fair and public hearing on whether the violating member should retain his or her appointed elected position as a member of the Hermosa Board of Trustees, then any expulsion and removal of the Board of Trustees shall require a vote for expulsion and removal by 4 board members of the Board of Trustees. So it seems like whether or not it's been violated is one question.
And then what happens in the case of a violation seems to be pretty
Seems to be.
cut and dry.
Joan, did you have something?
No, not really. It was kind of answered, but I would say that this is one reason you want to keep up American legal. You can't go through a pile of papers and know which is what they're trying to get rid of and what they're not. When you send it to American legal, you have to be very explicit on what is current and what you are taking away. Therefore, when you go online and go through American legal, you should be able to find the current as long as your motions and ordinance have been sent into them. So the important thing is to make sure.
All of us in the vote.
So while this is posted
Yeah,
to
I
American
did
legal,
spend 3007, the new one too.
I know the new one was there, I didn't see the old one there.
Yeah, so they didn't cross-reference it with 3006.
No, you have to tell them.
Yeah, so.
And I, like they just never got sent. Never got approved.
So this did not win in October 17th, when you were not here. It did not get sent the way it should have in the first place. So it could not have been, they could not have been told to, reference the other when they didn't even get it. So. All right, so the biggest question right now is, in honesty, is Shanna's absence at the meetings. And I personally would like to say this. She medically has medical reason for not being here. Number one, very medical reasons for not being here. And with the changes and everything, I would like to say that she maybe did not make it to two official board meetings, but she was at one work session and one special meeting. And I would like to say that in my mind, that counts. I also believe that she was voted in by the public and the public wanted her.
Got the position automatically, because nobody went against her.
Well, that is the same. But there was
Wasn't on the ballot.
Well, okay, she was not on the ballot, you're right, maybe she wasn't on the ballot, but that, nobody ran against her to put it. Yeah, she went through the petition process, she is legally sitting here, and I think that she should be allowed to sit here, and that we need to work on this. I think this is not a good ordinance or not a good policy or whatever. I think it needs a few changes. Kent, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, because it's very, by God, this is what it's gonna be. And, it does pay by telephone, there's a little bit of leeway there. But perhaps we look at it to say, unless otherwise agreed by a majority of the board, all members of blah, blah, blah. Something to give you a little reason. Every situation is different. If somebody's in a car accident and has a contraction for four consecutive meetings, but otherwise they've displayed a meaningful input, they've displayed a good attitude, and wanting to be an asset to the community. Why penalize them so hard, hard and fast?
Aaron?
So the devil's advocate on this is the new ordinance that went from a requirement of 4 meetings a quarter to 2 meetings a quarter. So it's half as much.
Specifically.
Yeah, half the attendance, and electronic means unlimited. So essentially, you can literally never physically attend a meeting and still be within the ordinance.
I understand that, but I recall when I was out of town and on the phone, and at that time it was on the phone, and it was horrible. And Shanna was trying to be on another phone. That meeting we were both absent from. And it was just impossible. Being just on one line, there was a lot I could not hear. And that made it difficult. I personally believe that at any time that a member is gone, that they should be able to at least try to listen in. And that was my thing. I will be there, I will try to hear, or I will be there so I can hear what I can hear. And that just makes it so that the rest of the members are not having to accept my phone calls and say, hey, what happened here? I was present as much as I could be. I learned as much as I could by being on the phone and hearing what I could hear. Now, I know that that is all gonna change. That the system that you are working very hard to set up should change all of that. You should be able to hear everything, should be able to see everything, whether I want it that way or not. I'm still old school, I don't like my picture. But anyway, I just think that in this case, we need to allow Shanna to be here to work on her position. She's obviously feeling better. I think that, she still maybe has a little ways to go, getting used to the new meds, and it was way more difficult than she thought it would be. But I think that we need to allow her to sit in this position and maybe rewrite this a little bit and then go forward from there. I see a hand back there somewhere. Dan?
Thank you. And that was back when Vicky was on the board, that we made them allowances because of all of her back surgeries going to Denver. And in the telephonic way, she couldn't get a hold of us then. So
That's
we
neither
were,
here nor there. That should not be brought
excuse
up.
me, ma'am, I'm talking.
I don't care. You shouldn't be brought up by another citizen.
No, he has every right to speak, Donna. Yes, he does. The truth is, let me say it. The truth is that was when the previous board had a member that was going to be gone for a lot of the winter months, and also had a member that was also very much in pain and going through a lot of things. And that is exactly when that ordinance got changed. And they changed it to fit themselves, or to fit what they thought was right at the time because of who was sitting on the board. That was their prerogative, and now it's ours. Now we have the ability to change it, to leave it, to do however we wish, but we have to deal with the fact that it truly did affect, or does affect Shanna because of the way that it was written. And so now we have the right and the duty as officers of this town to change it, to make it maybe better for the entire population instead of a certain few. And I will have to say that in my opinion, it's hard to miss the meetings. It is hard. You do miss stuff, and maybe you won't miss as much when we get the whole computer system going, but it is difficult. I also think that it is hard. It does make a little bit of a difference on the other board members because that person, in your case, you weren't available to do some of the committee stuff that maybe would have been helpful to the rest of the board. But you didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't a thing, you weren't.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten a chance to speak about what actually did happen, and I don't know if
Okay.
it even matters to what you're talking about.
But I guess that's,
It really doesn't.
it kind of doesn't, because other than the fact that it is what personally happened to you, which made you not possible to be here.
Right.
And if you want to share that with the board, that's not my deal, that's your deal, if you want to share it with the board. And I'm fine with it if you want to. Dan, go ahead.
And if I may finish, we wanted, and on the board, to change it to a case by case so that the board could review each situation in that individual, whatever their sickness was, whatever their purpose was. And they didn't want to allow that either.
That is true, that was talked about at the time. Thank you. Aaron.
Well, I think we're maybe getting a little into the personal, but I don't think we really need to, because we just read through it and we get to the end, we have to have a public hearing. And it needs 4 board members to approve. Really, we have to have it on the agenda, vote on it. If 4 board members, I mean, I think that's where if we're following the ordinance, and this is one of those situations where we can't let our personal feelings in. I mean, if there's ever such a situation, deciding whether or not to remove a board member has to be one where we have to remove our personal feelings completely. Because I think we're obligated to the citizens to do that. I think that's why there isn't on a case-by-case basis for
in such an event that the board members choose otherwise, I think we have to get to that vote. I think that's why it's set up that way, and until we get to that meeting and we have that vote, in order for it to go through, it takes unanimous. It has to be a unanimous vote, and I think that that is all the stopgap we need. And I think that we just read through this one basically. It appears to me that we have to have a hearing and address it as such. As far as this ordinance, I think this whole thing, if we can just repeal the whole thing and just go back to the way it was when it was fair.
It's, see, it's in.
Because this is just convoluted and confusing.
Well, the two together make it really
That's what
complicated.
makes it worse.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
To have a public hearing, you're paying to publish it. And just put it in the paper that you're having a public hearing, and then you need a unanimous vote, and you already know that you won't have a unanimous vote. But if you want to do the process, that's fine too. But when you talk about trying not to put billing into it or whatnot, the whole point of the public hearing and the vote, what is your vote based on? What has this person provided for the public before they miss the meeting? Is she or he for keeping on the board or excluding on the board? So you have to put personal feelings into what your decision of your vote will be as a public hearing. So to say there's not, I mean, there is. It's a deciding factor once you get to that vote. In my opinion.
Well,
And that does make it a case by case. If the first thing is required to have a public hearing, then it is a case by case. When it gets down to the vote, because what are you basing your vote on?
the knowledge that you have within yourself, that is what you're basing it on. Whether it's personal or professional, knowledge, it's knowledge, it's what you know. What you have learned, what you've heard, what you have seen. And so it does make it a little bit personal there, Donna.
Well, I think it's important to attend because you get way more out of conversation when you're here. And I realize Shannon's been sick, I don't have, but then on the second token, all these people keep saying, why doesn't she have to attend the meeting? Well, because the ordinance.
Okay, Cal?
So I'm just reading 3007B and where it says,
The new one? All members of the board of trustees?
well, that's the one that's current, right?
Yeah.
And, special okay, so I'll just read the whole thing. All members of the Board of Trustees shall be physically present or through electronic means, teleconference, telephone, or the like, 2 per quarter for each trustee, so that's where the 2 per quarter comes in. For the regular meetings, so 2 per quarter for regular meetings, period. Special meetings and medical disability of a trustee or a trustee's immediate family member via electronic means, teleconference, telephone, or the like are allowed with no limit. So the issue is not that she missed them physically, but she also missed them electronically.
That is correct.
Okay.
However, like I said, electronically wasn't easy at the time. We tried that. And it didn't work at that time. Now we're getting to the point where it is going to work. So
Well,
that could be.
I mean, but not to cut you off, but, when we had the geologist on here, that was turned into a fiasco as well. And, I'm not here to beat up on Shannon or anything, and I do appreciate everything she's done here. But I also agree that, we need to be here physically as much as possible. And then if we do have a 99% successful electronic attendance, I mean, that's a whole other thing too, but, it's a 5-person board for a reason, because we have to have an odd number so we can try to avoid ties, and we can have tiebreakers and things like that. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why these governing bodies have odd numbers.
Right.
You know, so, I don't know, I just wanted to clarify that point, because the first couple of times I read it, it didn't really make sense, but then when I read it out loud, it kind of made more sense.
Well, and just going through the last one we went through, like you said, that did not work. That, I mean, that says a lot right there, you know? I just believe that in this particular case, well, somebody needs to read that legal part to me again.
It appears to that part, if
I mean, yeah.
if it appears to the Board of Trustees that a member has violated any provisions of this chapter or grounds exist to expel and remove the violating member, the Board of Trustees shall conduct a fair and public hearing on whether the violating member should retain his or her appointed or elected position as a member of the Hermosa Board of Trustees. Any expulsion and removal of a member of the Board of Trustees shall require a vote for expulsion and removal by 4 members of the Board of Trustees. So when I say anonymous, I mean effectively anonymous, aside from the member. Because it just.
We need unanimous of the other 4 members.
Yeah.
So basically, first you have to decide if I'm in violation. You all agree I'm in violation in the public hearing, at which time we need 4.
It's very essentially.
All 4 of you have to agree to get rid of me.
All 4 of us?
Yes.
Well, then it's not gonna happen, because I will never vote that way.
So now the question is, do we follow the code of the ordinance and have the public hearing
Anyway,
anyway?
Because it's required, because you all have to determine if I violated it, and you have to have it.
first off, I don't believe there was a true violation, because I know that you would have been available by phone. We had that worked a few times. Now, there are times in the last month, when you missed some, when you would not have been available by phone.
And this board is very active. I mean, back in the day, this would have been, I would have missed 2 meetings, maybe 3, and I'd be back here. And I'm trying to keep the personal part out of this, but, you know, the way that the cuts, this will happen every 3 to 4 years, but I have to take medication. So if I finish out this term and I run again, it'll happen in my next term, at least once. That being said, the new medication just started going through my pump and catheter last Friday night at 8 p.m. And it's now Tuesday and I'm back, and it starts, basically they cut you down from where you're at on one drug to 50%, 25%, down to 12.5%. And then I was like that for 2 weeks before it changes over to the new med. The new med level is down here and then it's. So the fact that I just got on the new medication and I'm back, I think says a lot. But again, that's reading in my personal feeling on why I was gone. It couldn't be helped, and you know, I would have liked to say that I could attend if it was working all, you know, by a phone or whatever, but I wouldn't have been able to do that either. Something it was as bad as it was 10 years ago. It was awful. When all you can focus on is pain, there's no trying to concentrate. I wouldn't have done a good job for the town.
Right.
Just to say that I had to call in. I could have called in and put you on mute and never listened or said anything for the whole meeting. And that's just to get by on the ordinance. And that doesn't do the town any good. I wasn't providing any help. And I do apologize if you ever, you know, the board does very good working together. So have you come across any votes where it was blockaded 2-2 and my vote would have made a difference?
I don't believe we did. Did we?
You did have. Last week.
I apologize if that happened because I was not here.
Well, you don't bring that up, Joan?
Well, I just want to mention, because all the board members except for you, Linda, were here at a meeting, which would, since the big thing seems to be the concentrating on 2 meetings. Well, it would have been 2 meetings. She did call in. Terry was unable to connect both of you,
That's what I'm saying.
so you got connected. So it was through no fault of her own at that particular meeting that she was not here telephonically.
And then it wouldn't even be a question.
And then it wouldn't be a question. That was.
So I did attempt to attend it.
I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have that language in front of me, Aaron read, but it, the bottom line is it still takes 4 to vote a member. In other words, a unanimous decision.
Besides,
So, voila, we're back to, there is discretion, so that we're all wasting time.
I agree.
So you waste the town's money to publish for a public hearing and hold a public hearing. What do you know, but
I don't believe you do. I think that we could write a statement in the next, for the next board meeting and read it, that it, would not apply, and we're saving the town money by not going through that process.
Yeah, and review the matter, it's in, the board finds it's in the best interest of the town, and town finances to permit for continuing.
Yep, that would be my recommendation. Donnie, you had something else to say?
Say, let's just, and move on.
Well, we have to have a decision. So, yes, thank you. We have discussed it a lot, but I believe that it'll need to be brought up at the next board meeting. It will need to be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, if you take Joan's point into consideration that one of the absences was through no fault of her own because of technical difficulty,
That's all we need to say.
well, then technically she's not in violation,
Right.
right?
Right. And that's all we need to say.
So then there's not really an issue. My point is, then there's not really an issue, then, I mean, you could just do a clarifying statement at the next meeting.
Correct.
So that it's on the record and people can look back at it and see for what reason did we continue on this better.
Yep, good, very good. And then I still think that we need to look at the ordinance and change it, but I don't think it's the most important one on the agenda. And so you can put that, we'll just put this down on the list to, go through the policy or ordinance, whatever it is.
lower priority?
Yeah, on a lower priority.
so just thinking about how we would do it, so we could do a motion, as to whether or not the motion is that we decided that a public hearing is not appropriate, is or is not appropriate in this time.
Don't even need a public, I don't even need a motion.
You didn't bring it up.
Oh, we don't even, because people have been asking, that's why. And it needs to be out there because of that, for the public.
Because
But I think that we can just bring it up in town updates, that we did discuss it, we have gone through it, and that we realized that because of difficulties not caused by herself, with the technical difficulties, electronic difficulties in the office, she did not attend due to that, and for that reason, there's no bearing for any case whatsoever, but that we will be in the future looking at the policy ordinance and going over it and making sure that it fits the needs of the town of Hermosa. Yes?
No offense. That was worded in.
Oh, I know he did, yeah. So when it comes up on the tape, he always words things better. I'm not ever arguing that point. It's absolutely. But,
Thank you.
yes, okay.
I appreciate that.
I can talk real good.
You can talk real good.
And I agree, I think it should be addressed and put out there probably. People. No one stop talking about it.
Exactly. Okay, so that brings us back to the agenda.
For adjournment? What?
Where I have to find.
Adjournment, is that what you said?
Yeah, for adjournment.
abatements, is that all it's?
Abatements and complaints are what's left. We have been here for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I believe that this discussion is gonna take a while, and I believe that we should just, adjourn this meeting and put that on the next work session list as hopefully top priority. You don't look happy, Cal.
Are we gonna save the lilacs or not?
I'm gonna save the lilacs. Well, in my opinion, we're saving the lilacs, but here again, I'm a one vote.
So,
No?
okay,
These are fun, we don't need a motion to adjourn.
and then we have a work session on the 8th.
Yeah.
And the 22nd.
I mean, these are my phone. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
John's within their hand.
Joe,
Could I address the board quickly before you adjourn?
you,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Concerning the,
Media from last meeting.
when I was listening to the tape of one of your meetings, it was one before last, where Trina was here talking about the new website. And it was mentioned of only having 2 years of documents on the website versus what we have now, which is several years, I understand that. But there are several reasons why we did that and why we continue to do that. And part of the reasons, for keeping the minutes and the agendas that far back. An example is our generator grant. We received a request for information, which was about, I think it's about 15 pages long. Information we had to provide within 9 days to keep the process moving or forget the grant. Okay, I spent 3 hours one evening just looking for one document. And my only resource was what was online. So I started with 2012 looking at the work sessions. When I found a work session that had the item I'm looking for on it, I continued to look until they were no longer on the work session. Then I looked at the meeting agendas to find if it had been moved there, which it had. So I looked through agendas till it was no longer on there. And then I found the minutes that I needed for that grant stating what we adopted in the 2012 UBC code, because everybody seems to think we only had 2009, which I found the minutes for. In 2012, we adopted 2009. But in 2015, we adopted portions of 2012, not eliminating 2009, so it's kind of a mixed up deal there. But anyway, and you know, that's just one reason. Without that, I couldn't have done that. Had I come up here during the day, which I would rather not have to do, I would have been taking up Terry's time. She would have to have all them books upstairs from the basement for 3-4 years worth of agendas and minutes and stuff. So my opinion here is just that if we're doing a new website, we want it to be bigger and better, not less than what we have. And a lot of our documents that are on there have historical significance. A lot of them show a community that we have transparency. I mean, they can look at anything they need there. And of course, it helps with their open meeting laws and governs and other different things. But anyway, I just wanted you all to know why they're all there and why we need to keep them there. Every grant we've ever done, we've had to look up minutes for something, I swear. And it takes time. And I work from home, so I like to do it from home.
I'm sorry, Joan, and I should have remembered those things and didn't to tell the board. But she makes a very good point. Aaron?
I think we kind of decided it was minutes and agendas we keep pretty much indefinitely. It was the bulk of the packets that we were looking
Well,
at.
yeah, but you know, when you look through them,
Well,
you find information you need, because how can you reference something in the minutes if you can't go look at what was presented in the packet?
a big part of the problem is formatting as well. There are a lot of not very efficient document formats, so
They're
get to the,
PDFs, there's nothing wrong with that. In American legal, they're all searchable.
not everything on the website is PDF right now. And that's part of the
It's
issue.
PDF or Word, and if it's Word, it's only because they didn't transfer it to PDF.
Right, and that's gonna have an impact on, the whole point of it was to what storage capacity we have on our website. Like,
Well, why would you build a new website that has less storage than we have now?
it's not that it has less, we're storing different things, we're looking at a lot more things on the website that aren't necessarily available on the old one. So it's still too early to,
Well, Yeah, I'm not arguing your points here. I just wanted to make my point that it is useful and it has been used and I use it a lot.
Thank you, Gal.
It's 2025, why are we arguing about which documents we're gonna keep? Hard drive space is so cheap.
Yeah,
Like, the thing is what kind of data are we talking about? I tried asking Trina, she didn't know. I don't think we can even talk about this until we know what we're really talking about, but, I mean, even if it's 100 gigabytes, it's like nothing, you know?
We were, as I recall, it was gonna save us money going to the new website. So if it's saving us money, then that's good, but let's put that money, that same money to use so that we can have as much on it as we need.
is it
Wouldn't that make
saving you
sense?
money if people have to come up and bother Terry?
No, it is not,
That's why
not at
it's
all.
out there.
Well, I kind of just remembered where this conversation led to, and one point we touched on is that the old website has the audio recording stored on it. The new one won't, because all that's gonna be YouTube. So end result will have, the new website will use less storage than the one is currently, so it should open up capacity for documents, so this might be a non-issue.
But that assumes that we're comparing apples to apples with the hosting and everything. We don't have any of that information. We don't know what our allotment is on the new website, how much of that is gonna be taken up by the documents. In my opinion, I'm with Joan, we keep everything we can on there and then some. And if there's any overflow, we can have some in a local here, but I would be completely baffled if there was overflow. Just because, I mean, I had a website 10 years ago, and I mean, I had like 100 gigabytes for like $15 a month. You know, and it's just in looking at the website and seeing what's on there for myself for the old one, and I went through and I downloaded all the minutes and stuff like that, and all the agendas and everything. And, you know, I got them on my computer at home, and I could probably put them on this phone here, you know, for that. Now, packets is different, but even then, I mean, each packet's gonna be what, 10 megabytes, 15 megabytes? If it's full of color and everything, being a PDF, that's nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so I just think that we should just focus on making things, available and being as transparent as possible, you know, and helping people like Joan out at the same time. And then also, I would like to talk to Aaron about expanding the capacity using AI and stuff like that to do the research. So Joan can just type in, hey, I just want to know about this,
Yeah.
and it goes, okay, actually, it'll give a summary of what she's looking for, and then also the direct references where she can look at it herself.
Right.
You know, and to me,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we could do a chat.
Hold on, just
AI.
whatever it is, yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, to me, this is kind of like, you know, I don't know, we're going backwards
Yeah,
is what.
and we don't wanna go backwards.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's part of it is there's still so much we don't know about the new website.
Well, then we gotta learn and we can see, we'll take what you said to heart and go forward from there. Dan?
Just one quick thing, Terry had sent a complaint about Marie and Warren Street down there. And I did check on gravel. I got more gravel for less money than what we were getting before. I'm gonna have a load delivered down there, another load delivered over here, and then I'll address that over there on them complaints so Terry knows that something's being done. And the dumpsters, if anybody complains about them or anything, I always call to let you know when to dump them. So that way somebody don't come up and just say, hey, they need to be dumped, and I push them down halfway. But that way, I just wanted her to know to communicate and what we've done in the past, and that way you kind of know. And if you got any other complaints, just let me know.
Yes.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I can think of right at the moment is that we did start law enforcement interviews today. We had two, one was a no-show, and one went very, very well. We have two more tomorrow morning. Any board member is welcome to join us. I'm not putting a limit on it. If we are, If we have our quorum here, that's fine. It'll just be like an executive session. When you're meeting with the applicant, that is not public information. So like today, we locked the door while we had those going on. And tomorrow, we have one at 8:30 and one at 9:30 tomorrow. And
That's a good response time.
we had nine applicants. We looked through them and we decided to interview 4. And like I said, we had a no-show today. Did you get any call from him to say no?
Are
No
you
call, no.
replacing that one with one of the ones you?
I don't think that was anything we were thinking about doing.
Yeah, like the 5 we knocked out, it was pretty clear that.
Did you say knock that one?
Yeah, yep. So, Dan,
One more question. Now, you guys changed the streets, so Shanna isn't no longer the chair? Aaron is, or is it gonna stay?
no, she's still chair. Aaron will be vice.
Because what I'm asking for is that we talked to Pennington County about crack sealing and having them come down, so I didn't know if I should get with Aaron or with Shanna. That time I get together with Shanna, drive her through and show her what we need to do, and then bring it to the board.
I'm gonna look at all possible opportunities for the chip seal. There are a lot more options in Huntington County. We need to get our options open and see what we got available to us. And
Cracks in.
crack sealing and chip sealing, both, right? We need to know everybody that's available to us out there. Because we're gonna be growing into those guys and maybe the points of contact. This is definitely one that we need that.
So, we just can't take too much time on it. Because this is a time sensitive thing. Yes.
Just another point of, information that DOT put our speed limit sign back up there for Sun Community.
Yay, okay, that's a good thing.
That was my son that did it.
Oh, yes, of course. Good, thank you for it. The only other thing is that we are still receiving, applications for office help. And that ends on Friday night. That'll be the end of that, and so we will discuss at the next board meeting, board meeting. We'll go through, or no, executive session. We will go through that and decide through the interview on that. So,
That's a good one.
What's today? Can I ask about petitions that were filed?
petitions filed, had to be filed by 5 o'clock today. And Aaron put in for a 3-year, I put in for a 3-year, Donna put in for a 1-year. That is all that is in the office. We have to wait for the mail. I don't know legally how long we have to wait for the mail.
It has to be postmarked
Today. But with the way the mail's going, I've heard, yeah, that's what I've heard. So I think it actually comes down to the fact that I think the county needs to know.
I mailed a letter to Sioux Falls and
It only, well, some of them are 2 days,
Yeah.
I know, you just can't count on it.
yeah.
But I think it's a legal issue of, when it has to be a cutoff date on that. I don't know what it is.
Typically, the mailbox rule applies, but it's a little bit different situation because we're trying to set election days and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So,
You can treat it as you haven't received any unless something shows up down the road and then initially you have to go with it. But pretty much got into it.
Well, I would think that we would have until the 31st of this month to get them in our hands. And then on the 1st, the morning of the 1st, I don't know if that's a work day or not, but that would be the end of it. That would be my thought.
Can you tell me the dates of work sessions and stuff that are set, like give me my phone?
Work sessions are every other Tuesday night that there's not a regular meeting. We're
So
doing
there's
it
a meeting every week,
every week,
and they're always at
5 o'clock.
work sessions are at 5.
Yeah.
And you'll have to make sure on those envelopes that it's postmarked as of today.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We know that. Yep. Very good. But even that, like I said, I think they need to be in our office
Yes,
by the 31st.
yeah. I mean,
plenty of time to get here.
running,
Yep.
they're not.
Yeah, right.
Here.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
I said, don't
Okay, does
forget.
anybody else have any information they need or want to provide to the town? and its members.
Just a quick question on the media thing, then was there a decision made with the media thing that we need to go back and then look at, or
We
as far as?
looked at that and given, you wanna give her a copy of that?
We revised it a little bit.
We revised it just a little bit, and right now it's,
As far as limiting, making sure that we don't limit the amount of information.
she'll give you
And
that.
then probably like, if you're moving all the audio, the YouTube to reference somewhere there.
What's that?
Take like that in YouTube.
It just says it has to be postmarked, there's absolutely no limit. So I mean, you know, you just gotta be common sense to some extent.
Yeah, reasonableness.
Joe?
I just have a quick question, Aaron. On your, YouTube you're setting up, will that also work, for board members to call in or listen in and speak on that versus a telephone or not?
So we have Discord set up, we have telephone, we have Discord set up for interacting. YouTube right now will be outbound only live stream, not even gonna have text, chat, or comments turned on. If things are reasonable and there's positive interactions, maybe we'll try opening it up for comments or even live text chat. But,
I'm only speaking about board members though.
what's that?
I'm only speaking about board members.
For board members, it would really only apply to the extent that they can see in YouTube. It's never gonna be a two-way
So
street.
they can't attend a meeting via,
They can attend a meeting via Discord right now, which is set up. They can attend a meeting via phone right now, which is set up. So there are electronic meetings set up right now that are fully functional.
so you actually have two different things,
Yeah,
YouTube and Discord.
yeah, the Discord is separate animal. And getting them to run in parallels, maybe gonna be trial and error, but we'll get there.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you all for coming tonight. Everybody's input helps. Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
You bet.
Kent, you didn't bring,
You said you want these,
No, I figured.
you bring something, bring something.
You can take copies and print them out, yeah, I would like to copy also of that
Oh, the
stuff.
candy.
Right.
Well, it'll be included. in-
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh, it'll be on the next package.
Yeah, for your packet.
Or it is,
You'll get them on Friday.
Okay, very good.
Yes, we'll get them.
more than should.
Jana, did you get the email from Aaron? He emailed out that new media policy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry, I only sent it to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.